Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, December 29th, 2024. Coming to you live from Florida Media in Rockville Center. Have a fun-filled, action-packed edition of Hockey Night in New York coming at you tonight. Hope you're all enjoying your holidays. Stefen Rosner, how you doing, pal?
I'm doing great. Some lad got me this fantastic new NHL quarters it?
Sure, yeah, great taste.
Yeah, I don't know who it was, but I want to thank him.
Very nice.
Secret admirer,
Yeah, so much to talk about tonight. He's Stefen Rosner. I'm Sean Cuthbert. David Alter from the Hockey News will be joining us to talk a little Isles, talk a little Toronto Maple Leafs, because the Islanders are going to get to know them a little bit better in the upcoming days. So much to talk about, but before we dive in, I want to tell you all about our wonderful sponsors, starting with Main Street Board Game Café. Find your crowd and unplug your game at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Also proud to be sponsored by Center Station Bar and Grill. Catch every Isles game with great food and drinks at 279A Sunrise Highway in Rockville Center all season long. Also proud to be sponsored by Razor and Kniff, attorneys at law ready to fight for you. Check them out at razorandkniff.com. That's RAISERANDKENNIFF.com for a free consultation. And also proud to be sponsored by Tovi Hockey, the innovative hockey technology company and creator of the Diamond Air Blade. Get 10% off at tovihockey.com with promo code HNINY10. And folks, if you're hanging out with us live and you're in the chat and you would like to ask us a question during the Questions Brewin segment, type in Questions Brewin followed by your question, and then we will address that question. Now, with the pleasantries out of the way, we move on to experience points. Brought to you by Main Street Board Game Cafe, where we make our points about the Islanders' experience in the previous week. And, well, fresh off a loss about 15 to 30 minutes ago, the New York Islanders went into Pittsburgh for the back end of the home-and-home against the Penguins. And it might have went just about how you expected it. They dropped the game 3-2. They battled back late, scored 2 goals, 6-on-5, which was surprising and impressive, but it was not enough. They could not get the third one. They came close, but the first 55 minutes pretty much told the tale of that game, which was not good for the Islanders. Stefen, what do you have to say about it?
Power play 0-for-2.
Right.
Penalty kill 0-for-2. Goalie stands tall. Hogberg, his first start since April 28th of 2021, was excellent. We'll dive into his performance a little later, but goes to show that it's not the goaltending. At times this year, it's been the goaltending, hasn't helped them win games.
Sure.
But tonight was the perfect example of pretty much every game that the Islanders have lost in this year, where special teams just continues to kill this team. Historically bad on both fronts. Like you just mentioned, they do score 2 6-on-5, but their power play had movement, and Nedeljkovic makes that 6 save on Duclair. But overall, this was another opportunity for the Islanders to build on a big win. They come up short. They continue to do the tango, and unfortunately, if you're going to continue to do that, you're not going to make the playoffs. And I think at this point, we've talked a lot about how, well, they're back healthy, they're playing better. And you don't want to say they are what their record says they are, because they're without Duclair, without Horvat, without Pelech, still without Riley, no Varley, right? But you're getting to the point where you have to say this is who this team is, and this team is not a playoff team.
They certainly don't look like one, because it's nice that they got off the mat after the dreadful loss against the Sabres. We'll go over that very quickly. But with the win last night at home, nice little win in front of the crowd. You said there was a jubilant crowd at UPS Arena last night, right?
Yeah, I think it was 80% Islander fans, 20% Penguins fans.
Okay.
But the 80% Islander fans were in their seat at warm-ups, chanting the entire game, even when the Islanders allowed a goal. Like, it was probably the more exciting crowd we've seen this year.
A lot of holiday present tickets, probably.
I was going to say,
night, right?
Yeah, I saw people saying on social media too that a lot of the season ticket holders sold their tickets for that night, but I think Islander fans filled it because they were coming home from the holiday.
Yeah, you see that a lot. The Islanders usually pack the building pretty well around Christmas time, holiday time, Hanukkah time, all that. So nice that they get the win last night, but once again, they have an opportunity to build some momentum and maybe go on a winning streak, rare around these parts this year. And once again, they fail. And you can't, like you said, you can't use the injury excuse anymore. Sure, maybe some of those guys are still trying to find their game. Barzal's been pretty quiet since he's been back. Duclair has probably been up until actually tonight.
Yeah.
He's been getting on the score sheet. He's actually looked very well. He looked good tonight, even though he didn't get on the score sheet. But all in all, this is your 24-25 New York Islanders team, and there is nothing that tells me that this team is capable of doing what they need to do to go on a run and even just sneak into the playoffs like they have the last couple of years, right? I mean, I said it on Twitter, the special teams cannot remain the way they are, and tonight is another sign that they have made.
They can.
Well, the point is that there's been no progress.
Right.
And they talked about how they were practicing over the couple of days off that they had.
They did practice it,
it's not bearing any fruit. They're not getting the results. And you saw a couple of times tonight where they actually generated some offense in the power play, but once again they can't finish. And listen, it's fine to talk about this stuff 10, 15, 20 games into the season. They're still finding their way. They're not healthy. But look, we're approaching the halfway point now, and we have a very good idea of what this New York Islanders team is, and it is clearly not enough. And I wouldn't blame any fan out there who's telling themselves this is who they are, and they have no expectations of seeing much more.
And we talked about it before we recorded here about how, let's see what Patrick Waugh has to say after a loss like this. He's been pretty...
Right.
Again, I think with his team, he's not being as positive as on camera. Obviously, he doesn't. If he doesn't want to embarrass the player or the team, he's not going to.
Right.
But tonight, this is what he had to say following this loss.
I just felt like after we gave up that second goal, we were not mentally strong enough. I mean, we have to, it's just a goal. I mean, we were down 2 in this league. 2 goals is nothing. We prove it. It's 7 minutes. We pull the goalie. We score 1. 5 minutes. We score another 1. You could come back in those games. And sometimes I just feel that we don't believe enough in that.
That last line. And I felt we don't believe enough in that. The entire year, whether the Islanders were winning games, losing games, whatever it was always, we believe, we believe, we believe. Mm-hmm. And this is the first time that there's been a hint that there's lack of belief. Whether you believe the words coming out of the players' mouths or not, it was never said.
Right,
that they don't.
Right. Now there's doubt.
And Patrick Waugh, rightfully so, because yes, does he deserve some of the blame? 1,000%. He just put the onus on the players and said, listen, like, we're coaching them to do X, Y, and Z after giving up a goal, whatever it is. It's on them to believe in essentially us and believe in themselves. And if Waugh thinks they're lacking in that, that's pretty damning.
Look, this team, we know they're worst overall in the league in both the power play and the penalty kill. And this has also carried over. So you're talking 37 games, and it's also carried over from last season where these same guys know that their special teams have been dreadful now for a long time. A lot of games carrying over. And they know that anything that they've tried this year hasn't improved. In fact, it's gotten worse than what it was last season. So there's no way this hasn't crept into the heads of these players where they go out, to kill a penalty, or they go out on the power play and say, here we go again. And, here's another 2 minutes where we're either getting scored on or we're not scoring ourselves. And they're kind of just, fulfilling that expectation every time that they step out on the ice in these special team situations. And as we've said on this show before, you look on paper and you look at the talent that they have. This isn't a group that's incapable of having at least a 20th overall power play and penalty kill, right?
Yeah.
15th maybe, right? Like, you look at the names, and these are guys who are capable. So obviously it goes beyond just talent. It goes beyond, ability. I mean, it's obviously a mix between the players, their mentality, the strategies that they're putting out there, coaching staff included. I mean, everybody from top to bottom is failing. And, who in their right mind would look at this and say to themselves, oh, yeah, when game 45 comes around, they'll figure it all out, right? Like, all of a sudden, everything's just going to go the right direction.
Yeah, it's a problem. Either the players don't believe in the coaching staff, or whatever the coaching staff, the players are buying in, and it's just the wrong thing. We've talked about it so many times. You have to change stuff up. Now, the Islanders have tried a lot this year, which go back to the roster and just the players as the guys you blame, because Waugh's changed the power play. He's altered the penalty kill. They altered the penalty kill structure from last year with Huda coming out and Abilene coming in.
Right.
Nothing's worked. And all of this comes back to the roster. But at the same time, like you just said, there's no reason that even if the players weren't 100% healthy and they were missing certain guys, that this power play should be this bad or this PK should be this bad. It's ridiculous.
You almost have to try hard to make it that bad.
And the question is, well, what do you do? Because I guarantee we're going to have questions about or comments, fire this guy, fire that guy. But if you fire that guy or that guy, which essentially did, without firing John McLean, the penalty kill, they fired the guy they thought was part of the issue. And it's turning out that the PK has been worse. I'm not saying that Lane Lambert wasn't to blame for what went wrong in his year, but you look, we're approaching Patrick in like a month or so, Patrick Roy's first full year. Penalty kill has been worse than when Lane was here. The power play has been worse. And overall, like the blown leads was an issue a little bit under Lane, but it's been much more of an issue under Wah. I'm not saying Wah's not a good coach. I know that people are commenting that as well. And I also think Lane was put in a tough spot with a flawed roster in his first spot. And I think Wah is coming here with also a flawed roster. But at some point, you need a coach to help fix something. Starts, closing, special teams. And again, I'm not saying it's Wah's fault, but at some point, if Wah has not helped in any category, he got them to the playoffs because of the emotion, but if he's not helping in any category, it's you can easily question, is he the right guy for this group? Because you know for a fact they could trade Nelson, Palmieri, Peugeot, a couple of these guys. There's still a core that's signed long term, and if you got to put those guys in the best position to succeed, and if it's not Wah, who's it going to be? Like, I don't think they're firing Wah this year. I think if a new GM does take over, Wah still has a chance to be here, or maybe, you know, I'm not going to say what I said last year because someone spun it and ran it, but you could put the archives back. But at some point, something has to change, and if the Islanders do sell off some players and things don't change, then you know that it goes beyond the players, which I think it does.
Yeah, I mean, it's really confusing to me how, you know, you look at the roster that they have and that they're not putting out, you know, what you would expect to happen just looking, you know, from top to bottom of those players here. And like you said, they've gone through a number of different coaches now, whether it's the head coach, whether it's the assistant coaches, and nothing has changed here. And it just it makes you wonder, you know, where this team is at mentally, and is it finally a situation where it doesn't matter who's behind the bench, that this is just a group that has checked out, that they've kind of run their course, and maybe it's just time to, you know, flip the script here and maybe move some guys and you know, refresh this roster because you know, as we've said too, it hasn't been without effort. They've been in the majority of their games, and if you want to talk about very, very, very modest improvements, they have closed out a couple more games more recently now when they've had leads and they haven't blown it and let it go into overtime, let it go into a shootout. They closed out the game against Toronto. They closed out the game last night against Pittsburgh. Sure, they surrendered a couple goals to make it close, but they did close those games out in regulation. But in the grand scheme of things, even if you're doing that and you can't follow that up with another 2 points, I mean, the fact that this team only has two-game winning streaks the entire season is absolutely bonkers.
Well, it's why they are where they are.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what this season has been. It's literally been a step forward, a step back, maybe a step forward, 2 steps back. So, again, I don't know what is going to jolt this team, you know, into the right mindset, onto the right track. And the longer we go here, obviously it looks like that's not going to happen. And, you know, we're looking at 40 some odd games left in the season. I mean, it's not going to be a lot of fun to be watching those from here until the end if this is all they're going to do.
Well, you want to bring up experience points before we get to David Alter.
Yeah.
I guess got to give the fans experience points for Saturday, showing up after Monday's game.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do that.
Sure.
Experience points, I think you can throw out 1,000 to Duclair. Back healthy and he's performed. You mentioned him.
Yeah.
Hogberg, which we'll get to, more experience point. I mean, first experience in 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, he individually had a good experience tonight. Yeah. Unfortunately, the rest of the team kind of
Sorokin getting a breather, experience on the bench. I mean,
wow, really a positive spin on the points here. But look, you got to take at least 846 points away from the team in front of Hogberg tonight, because once again, they can't get the job done. And yeah, sure, you could talk about they're trying, they're in the game, they're getting shots on goal, but they're not finishing, they're not scoring when it matters.
They're not protecting their net at all.
Yeah, the blown coverage is tough to watch, and you know, just everything overall. Special teams 5-on-5, it's tough because they seem to just continue to make the same mistakes. Like, they're not learning from their mistakes. And that's why, maybe they can win a game based on talent one night and then completely, we see what happens tonight. We see what happens against Buffalo, and it's been a rough going that way. So I think in overall, you got to go negative on the experience points board for sure.
Agree. Nailed it.
All right, so that will do it for Experience Points, brought to you by Main Street Board Game Cafe. Unplug your game and raise your experience at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game from old favorites to the hottest new releases. We have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, Lorcana, and organized play communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe, find your crowd, unplug your game. I'm going to take a break, and then we're going on the line with David Alter.
Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan.
Attention all artists, storytellers, and creators of all kinds. It's time to make your content stand out above the rest, and Floored Media is the place to make your visions become a reality. Maybe you want to elevate your podcast and add some video, or turn that novel you wrote into an audiobook, or maybe you just need the right space to produce your daily vlog. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, Floored Media has the professional facilities, exceptional staff, and intimate atmosphere to breathe life into your creative passions at every step of the process.
Did you have a nice break? Well, it's time to get back on the couch for more Islanders therapy on Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. Joining us on the line, presented by Tovi Hockey, is David Alter at the Hockey News. My colleague, Dave, first off, before we dive into the upcoming Islanders-Leafs game, I want to take you back quickly to the last game these two teams played. 6-3 win for the Islanders. What did you notice from the Leafs in that game, and why do you think they could probably have a better effort next time around?
Good to talk to you, Stefen. It cut off a little bit there on me, but I think you're referring to the last game between the Leafs and Islanders, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so, I go back to it. I saw, an Islanders team that caught the Leafs sleeping, really. Like, that was a game I had very little expectations for from a Toronto standpoint, from a New York standpoint. And Toronto was just kind of coming off the high of beating Buffalo and just really kind of fell flat like a fatigued team. They didn't want to admit that they were tired, but they made a lot of mistakes and they didn't shoot the puck at the net. So that was really my takeaway. Now they'll be a bit more rested. I expect the Leafs will play a lot better against the Islanders this time around. The Islanders have pieces, and they've always kind of been a good defensive team. So it's really kind of confused me why they're as bad as they are. And I figured Patrick Waugh would have pressed a little bit harder. But for whatever reason or another, they just can't seem to get it going. But there have been some questionable contracts under Lou Lamoriello, which the Leafs know all too well. So maybe that part doesn't surprise me as much.
Hey, David, how's it going? Sean here. Yeah, we were just talking about the mess that is the New York Islanders before you came on. But I did want to touch on the Maple Leafs here. This is a team who's been towards the top of the league nearly every season, at least during the regular season. We see them there once again. Going into today, they were at the top of the Atlantic Division. Obviously, they have Tree Living now running the show, Berube behind the bench. What's different for this team this year, if there is anything different, or are Toronto Maple Leaf fans still bracing themselves for a successful regular season that eventually leads into an earlier exit than they would hope?
Yeah, Sean, there are differences when you actually watch it. It's kind of interesting because you look at the Leafs of yesteryear in the Auston Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander era, and you see a lot of goal scoring, you see a lot of offense, and you see, that up-tempo pace and all that stuff. But this year, you're seeing more of a defensive team that's closing out the interior of the ice, not necessarily worried about if they don't have the puck on their stick as much as the opponent does, but they're just kind of making sure that they don't give up grade A chances. And what you're seeing is a team that has increased in terms of where they stand in average goals against per game. You're seeing players stick up for each other a lot more, which a lot of old school hockey fans, especially old school Leaf fans, really miss of previous Leaf teams, where if someone gets hit, there's guys to step up and make sure that they're kind of holding each other accountable. So there is that element of it. That's a Berube trademark, but it's also the additions of a guy like Chris Tanev and just blocking shots and getting in the shooting lane, no matter how significant the shot on goal attempt is, whether it's a close game or if he's doing it when they're already up 6-2 early in the third period, he's still doing it. And there's just an attitude shift that way. So you're not seeing them put the puck in as much. They still have that ability, but what you're seeing is a lot fewer chances in the middle of the ice from the opposition, and that's been the biggest difference in the Toronto Maple Leafs this year.
And Dave, you mentioned that attitude shift. Is that the biggest reason why they've been able to have success without Auston Matthews in the lineup?
Yeah, I do think that. The goaltending has been good, but really it's just been the type of shots that the oppositions are getting. Like, it's not as grade A. It's not as a high-quality chance. The Leafs are getting more chances off the rush, and they're getting more of those game-breaking opportunities. And really, they're making sure there aren't second and third chance opportunities in front of the net. Like, that's really the biggest difference. And so the offense was kind of drying up in the earlier part of the season. It's picked up over the last little bit here. Someone like John Tavares recently, although the Leafs have lost 3 of 4, was kind of sounding the alarm a little bit that they've got to be a bit cleaner and that their execution has been off over the last 3-4 games, and that's dating back to that previous meeting against the Islanders. That's kind of where it started. So I think really the biggest difference has been that they just stand up for one another. They've kept the opponents to the side and not the middle of the ice, and they're allowing their goaltenders to kind of see everything, and they're doing more about winning the low-scoring games, which I think they feel they're always on the other side of when it comes to the playoffs, and that's kind of where they've shifted their focus.
And you mentioned answering your first question about Lou Lamoriello and contracts and things like that, and I think there's a portion of the Islanders fan base that is ready to cut the cord with Lou. Obviously, he did sign long-term contracts. Islanders are cap-strapped. They're a mediocre hockey team. But if you could just take us through, especially for Islander fans that weren't watching the Leafs really closely, what the ending of Lou's tenure was like in Toronto, with what deals happened, and I'm assuming there's plenty of similarities there.
Yeah, so I mean, like, when Lou Lamoriello came in 2015, the Leafs were still in the early years of the Shanahan plan. Brendan Shanahan became team president in 2014, and they kind of hired Mike Babcock first. They actually hired, arguably at the time, the top head coach that was available. They got him before they got the GM, and then it was just kind of, okay, how are things going to be run and aligned here? And so Lou Lamoriello did some good things in terms of changing some of the culture, in terms of some of the rules that maybe us media people don't really like, but I guess that they felt that the Leafs will always kind of take advantage of. And the one thing that I'll say that's good about Lou Lamoriello, when I talk to other GMs around the league, and one of the things that the Leafs have shifted, is he's always been a believer, and you've probably heard this in New York as well, that if you have time on your side, use it. So when it comes to having space around the cap or making space or doing kind of things where you don't really have to lock yourself into something, he's not going to pull the trigger on something early just for the sake of making a move. And, they'll let an injury or some other situation come up before making any sort of roster decisions. And once Lou Lamoriello came around, the Leafs were better at doing that. They were able at making sure, hey, you don't need to make this really bad trade yet, because you don't have to do anything for a couple of weeks and someone might get hurt that might free up your cap space or not be around, and you can kind of maneuver around the cap that way. That got better under Lou Lamoriello. Maybe some sort of uniformity of playing for the team instead of playing for the individual might have gotten better. But I would say that there's a lot of not so progressive things that the new age NHL probably doesn't benefit from someone like Lou Lamoriello. I'm sure a sticking point is Pierre Engvall's contract, for example. Is probably something that like, okay, I get why you kind of did this to save money, but this is not a bet that looks great right now. And, maybe Lou Lamoriello finds a way to make clear of that money. That's something he was always good at. But, those are the kind of things that we saw from Lou Lamoriello. Once he moved on, some of the not so progressive things did kind of clear away. Like, players were allowed to have facial hair again. Like, that was a big thing after Lou Lamoriello was gone. But in terms of, like, team digital staff on planes and stuff like that, Lou Lamoriello was making sure that he was good at giving the players the team space that they needed. So it's just a lot of behind the scenes stuff, really, that was the biggest difference there.
Well, David, speaking of time and money, two players on the Toronto Maple Leafs that are running out of time on their contract are John Tavares, Mitch Marner, obviously two big names there. Recently, John Tavares was quoted as saying he'd like to stay in Toronto. Do you believe him? And do Toronto Maple Leaf fans believe him as well?
I think there's a path for him to stay. Look, I mean, last year was a really bad year for John Tavares from a production standpoint. And this year, he looks like a man on a mission. And I believe a lot of why the passing of the torch of the captaincy happened, not just to give Auston Matthews the captaincy, he probably would have gotten back in 2019 had he not got into some personal trouble. I think it was more so, look, if John Tavares is going to stay here, the captaincy kind of has to be gone because, they can move that part out and now they can focus on John Tavares, the player, instead of John Tavares, the C and everything that comes with it, and kind of moving on from that element of it. His points per game last year was the worst since his rookie year. Like, he was bouncing between second and third line center, that it looked like there wasn't a really good fit. Mm-hmm. This year, he looks a lot better. He looks like he's free of any sort of liability and something. And this is still a really good point per game player that could make it work in Toronto. And I think the Leafs could make it work from a cap perspective in the role that he's playing right now. Where, deferred money is something that gets talked about, where you can bring the cap number lower, but still give the player the money. And so I'm sure they'll be creative in it. There'll be some sort of hometown discount. I just don't know how much, but it's clear John Tavares doesn't want to go anywhere else but play in Toronto. And I think that he would take a bit of a haircut to do it. It's just a matter of what's the path, what's the role for him. And as far as Mitch Marner goes, that's a whole other thing. Mitch Marner has all the keys to how this is going to play out. I would be shocked if this gets done before the playoffs, because the playoffs have always been the questions about Mitch Marner. So I think this is something that gets resolved, whether it's with Toronto or with another team, well after the playoffs are done, in that period between when that's done and July 1st.
Last one for me, Alter, and appreciate the time. Pierre Engvall, you mentioned him. He's obviously been a healthy scratch with the Islanders. As of late, it's clear that Waugh doesn't like his style of hockey. Just what did you see from Pierre Engvall during his time in Toronto? And did you ever feel like he could be more than just an in-and-out NHL kind of player?
Yeah, I mean, his last couple years, they've invested a lot of time in him. His last couple of years, he was looking like he was going to be, a good power forward. But the one knock, and I'm sure the Islanders fans see it also, the one knock on him is, as big and as speedy and with a little bit of skill that he does have, he doesn't hit. And, that's a guy who could throw his weight around and create a lot more space for himself and his teammates, and he just doesn't hit. And that always seemed to be the ceiling there. And when the Leafs did need to make a change in terms of how they were going to make themselves up for the playoffs and clear up cap space, moving Pierre Engvall was an easy move for them. So it made a lot of sense for the Islanders because there was upside there. And, I kind of looked at it with Matt Martin, where if you go into a team like Toronto compared to New York, where maybe the fit was better, he would learn to hit and he would excel there. At least in his first year, it looked like he was kind of finding his groove. But then, I don't watch it on an everyday basis like you guys to kind of see what happened, that he fell. Maybe it's the fit with Patrick Waugh. Like, there could be a lot of different elements to it that I just don't know. But, he came up with the Marlies. He showed he had some skill, and he always had the size. And there was always this belief that if he can play well positionally and hit, then he could really be a strong top 6 power forward or even middle 6. But it doesn't seem like that's panned out as of right now anyway.
For sure. And so, David, we have a pair of games now coming up, home and home, between the Islanders and the Maple Leafs. And despite the Maple Leaf success and the Islanders' struggles, the Islanders seem to have had the Maple Leafs number recently. What do you see from the Toronto Maple Leafs perspective on that? What is it about the Islanders that the Maple Leafs seem to struggle when they play against the Islanders, and they're probably not winning as many games against them as they should be?
I mean, I've always liked their defense. I've always liked the fourth line. I know it's changed now, but it used to be pretty consistent. Like, their bottom 6 used to be pretty stable, and I would argue that the Islanders use their fourth line more than most teams use their fourth line, and I think that kind of helped refresh their top 6 by how often they were able to use them, where Toronto leans on their top guys a lot. A little bit less this year, but not as much. And so I think there were a lot of elements in the Islanders game that I think the Leafs have now started to incorporate. I just like their grittiness. Like, that's really been the hallmark of the Islanders and their strong defensive play. And, you guys had Lane Lambert there for a little, and I like what he's done from a PK standpoint. The Leafs have really improved that element as well. And he's one of the players, or a lot of the players have said to me about Lane Lambert when it comes to the PK and everything, is that he is very detailed about exactly where they need to be on the ice for certain formations and scouting. Maybe as a head coach, it was a little different, but from a defensive look and from a PK standpoint, the Leafs really seem to have found something in him as an associate coach.
Well, David, that was a great nugget to leave with on the Long Island side of things here with Lane Lambert. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit. But, David, pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for your time tonight, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yeah, you got it, guys. We'll see you on the island soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
Dave.
All right, folks, that was David Alter, and that will do it for On the Line, presented by Tovey Hockey, the innovative hockey technology company. Stefen, why don't you tell us a little bit more about those guys?
Yeah, Tovey Hockey, the innovative hockey technology company, is the creator of the 100% solid carbon fiber Diamond Air blade, the only other NHL-approved blade technology, with superior feel and increased swing speed due to its perforated design, unparalleled control thanks to the micro-grip blade texture, greater durability courtesy of its patented aerodynamic cross-beam construction, and unparalleled shooting accuracy thanks to its large sweet spot. Tovey Hockey is changing the game by making the next-gen stick of tomorrow available today. Go to toveyhockey.com to check out their great selections of sticks, gear, and apparel, and use promo code HNINY10 for 10% off your order. Tovey Hockey. Stronger, faster, superior.
Stronger, faster, superior. Go to toveyhockey.com. Use promo code HNINY10 for 10% off your order. We're going to take one more break. When we come back, it's
Lane
time
Lambert
to...
chat.
Say what now?
Lane Lambert chat when we get back.
Lane Lambert chat and a little What's on Tap.
Nice run.
Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The train rolls on right here at Hockey Night in New York. Straight into Center Station Bar and Grill, the presenting sponsor of What's on Tap. But before we start talking about those games, yes, Stefan, why don't we talk about the 11th overall penalty kill of the Toronto Maple Leafs led by Lane Lambert?
Lane Lambert, penalty kill in Toronto, 84.1%. That, I mean,
must be nice.
The PK wasn't amazing with the Islanders and obviously got worse, but maybe it's the players. And you look at...
I know somebody who argued pretty heavy
and we spoke about this too, is that Lane got so much you-know-what the entire year. And I also thought Lane, like whenever he gets another chance, if he does to be an NHL head coach, he'll be better for it. Again, I don't think he was put in a spot to succeed. But the failures of Waugh to turn this team around, not that Lane's staying up laughing at night about it, but
right.
Lane's like...
You see? Right.
Right.
You see?
And so I'm not saying that everyone should write apology letters to Lane Lambert, but I think there's a portion of the fan base that ridiculed him for everything he did and blamed him for everything, where that was clearly not the case. But what's on tap, Sean?
Well, look, just to finish on that thought, I mean, look, everybody loves a scapegoat, right? And we've talked about the different coaches that have come through here, whether it's at the head or the assistant coaches, and it's very easy to just point at them and say, hey, this is the reason why the team's struggling, this is why this isn't working or that's not working. And sure, sometimes it is, or at the very least, they're absolutely contributing to it, right? But it is kind of funny when you see a coach like Lane Lambert get back behind a bench in an assistant capacity. We learned that he's running the penalty kill for the Toronto Maple Leafs, a team who hasn't really been known for their defense. Now, they did bring in some other players to help out with that. But there you go. What was it, 84 point?
It's either 84.1 or 81.4, but also Jim Hiller in L.A., their power play is like... I look it up now.
Right. But the point is, you're seeing these guys succeed with other players elsewhere. So... to me, that tells me that it probably falls a little bit more on the players than it does the coaches. Because again, like, look, these guys are professionals. They've been through all the ranks of hockey, juniors, minors, all that stuff. These guys know how to play hockey at this point. And sure, the coaches do make a difference. The coaching staff is important, without a doubt. Whether it's the morale, just the mentality of a team, keeping the players focused, also implementing strategy. But at the end of the day, it's the guys on the ice that have to execute the plan. And that's not to say there's no fault on Waugh and his staff, but we have seen well into this season now that this team has been incapable of executing on whatever strategies they're putting forth. And I'm sure they've switched them up because it's been failing up, down, left, and right no matter what they've tried, right? So these guys just aren't getting it done. So, you know, maybe Lane Lambert wasn't as much to blame as he was previously, but, you know, who knows? And he's doing well in Toronto. Good for him.
The question is it that they're buying into the plan and the plan is wrong, or are they turning their mind off to are they ignoring the plan? Because those are huge differences. If they're buying in and it's failing, they're at least buying in. But if the players are looking at the plan and saying, yeah, we're not doing that, which means they're not buying into Waugh and the coaching staff, like, that's a huge difference.
Sure. All right, what's on tap?
Same team.
New Year's Eve, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Islanders go up into Toronto for a 1 p.m. slate.
That's good.
On New Year's Eve. I guess they're just assuming everybody has off.
Or
enough people to fill the building. Yeah, I suppose so. But either way, 1 o'clock, Islanders against the Leafs. That will be a rematch of their recent tilt. And then they get to see him again on Thursday, January 2nd, 2025. My God, that will be at home at UBS Arena for a 7:30 start. Before Sunday, the Islanders go into Boston. 6 p.m. game. I believe you'll be in Boston for that one, right?
I'm going to make the drive.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. It looks like Hockey Night in New York will probably do a show on Saturday to precede that game because we want to get you in here to the studio before you take that little road trip. Yeah, before you ship.
You can't play that song due to copyright, right?
So that's as close as we can get to it. That's about right. Absolutely. So 3 games on the slate. How are they going to do, pal?
I mean, they're going to win one and lose one, probably. That's kind of what they've done.
But there's 3, though.
I know. So it depends which one that happens first. Lose, win, lose, win, lose, win. It's so weird because we just talked to Alter, and they are without Auston Matthews. Difference now is the Leafs had played second of a back-to-back 3 of 4.
Right.
Now the Islanders are going to be playing 3 of 4 to do that, now going into a well-rested Toronto team.
Right.
But it's just weird because they seem like this is one of those teams that they just get it, whether it's Tavares and Barzal like this against Tavares when they came back to celebrate his return, or just the ability to get up when you're in Toronto. I think that's also plays a huge part when you're in Toronto. That's an important city, obviously.
Sure.
Isaiah George had magic there last time.
He did.
It just seems to fuel a lot of these guys. I mean, there's a couple of Toronto natives. Zizekas, I think, is a Toronto native.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I wouldn't be shocked if they beat the Leafs these next 2 games. Then Boston will be, Boston's one of those teams that's like the Islanders this year. So is Pittsburgh.
Sure.
No one really knows who they are. That's it. So I think that's really...
Well, that's what's maddening about this team is because you really just don't know what you're going to get on a night in, night out basis. They've proven capable of beating better teams in the league. They've proven capable of losing to terrible teams in this league. There's just nothing positively predictable about this team. Anything predictable is on the negative. The penalty kill, the power play, blowing leads, right?
Yep.
What have they done this season that you can say, okay, they have this kind of lead or they're playing this kind of way? Have you been able to look at any game this season and be like, okay, this is a good sign, they're going to win this game? Anything predictable on the positive end of things?
No.
Zero.
I mean...
Zero.
Any game they have a lead in the third period, my mind goes to how are they going to find a way to blow it? So...
Right.
Even if they're up 3, it's just that what if, I mean, when you see the goalie get pulled on the other end, you're thinking... They might win, but they're probably going to allow a 5-on-6 goal because they have. Yeah, it's a great point. I don't think. I would say they win faceoffs, but nothing that determines wins.
No guarantees for this team on the winning side of things.
Nope.
Zero.
Even in the games where they look like they're dominating, like the Chicago game. You thought that would have been the best win of the year, blow out Chicago, and then Chicago.
Well, there it is, right there. They do not close out games clean. And now we've seen the worst side of that when they actually cough up the 2 points, right? And we've seen the okay side of it where, okay, they let them back into the game, they let a couple goals up, but they hang on long enough to actually win, right?
They've played 160, maybe 2. The Toronto game, the 6-3, and the win over the Penguins, which was also 6.
And I know that they won by a few goals over Colorado way back in ancient history.
Yep, that was a good one too, but yeah. I don't know if that was a full 60.
Right. Right.
It's very hard to play full 60 with.
That was a tease, right? That was so early in the year. We're like, man, Islanders, they beat Colorado. Big score here. This is going to be a good year.
They got shut up by Dallas the night before. That was the first one of the year. Sorokin's first start of the year. Duclair scores in that game on
good
in front
vibes.
of the net.
What happened?
Schedule. Speaking of the schedule, you talk about what's on tap. They played Chicago home and home. They played Pittsburgh home and home. Now they play the Leafs 3 times in like a week and a half. I don't know. I think it's because of the Four Nations and they're trying to sneak games in, but they don't face the Rangers again.
Luck of the draw.
Like, for what? Like, it's just weird.
And 2 minor nuggets about the schedule ahead. The Boston game is the start of a 3-game roadie for the Islanders. Then after that, 7 games at home. They play the vast majority of the second half of January.
Too bad they're under 500
at home. I think there's only like 1 game at the end of the month where they play on the road, but they have 7 straight at home. Look, maybe that's it right there. That's the season.
Well, look at last year. Watt takes over January 20th.
Yeah.
Then they end up going what? They're going on a tear, point streak, and then they go on the whatever the record was.
Right.
Maybe they're just waiting.
Yeah, maybe, but I just don't think there's going to be any, shocking change like that was last year.
Even
right?
on
I think they're riding this out.
Even on that streak, though, penalty kill and power play are bad.
Right.
So it's weird. But
it's all weird.
Yeah.
So if you're still watching,
if you haven't turned us off yet.
No, I'm talking about the Islanders season.
Oh, sorry.
New Year's Eve against Toronto, the second against Toronto. Obviously, they're watching the show, Stefen.
How could they
not? And then Sunday against Boston. But hey, that'll do it for What's on Tap, presented by Center Station Bar and Grill. Catch great food, drinks, Isles games, and live events at 279A Sunrise Highway in the great Rockville Center. And now it's time to talk about heroes. The hero of the week, Stefen, and I'm going to let you start us off with that. What do you got?
No-brainer, Marcus Hogberg.
Hey.
First off, he should have had a start probably in that Chicago back-to-back or home
Looks
and home
like
in terms of that. But Hogberg kept saying how ready he was talking to him after practice a couple of times. Waugh said he had so much trust. And if you're going to give Sorokin a break with the Islanders needing points, all Hogberg had to do was not be a part in why they lost the game. If they lose the game but he plays well, you earn confidence. Tonight, I think he stopped 38 of 41 or 39 or 42. They keep changing the freaking stat. But he was brilliant. He allows 2 power play goals against where he had no chance. The third one goes off of Romanov and in. He made a ridiculous paddle save.
Yeah.
Ridiculous paddle save. And this is a guy that has not had NHL actions, and I said it before, April 28th, 2021 of NHL action. He's played overseas in Sweden. He played with Bridgeport, but the NHL is different than any other league.
As we know.
And he showed that all the hard work he's put in to get back to the NHL and be here was justified. I'm not saying he earned a start against Toronto. Right. I love the way he played enough. You're not going to sit Sorokin again. But if Varlamov's going to be out longer term and he's not skating yet, Hogberg just showed he could help this team win games, or at the very least, keep them in games. And that's what they need.
Yeah, it looks like maybe at the very least they can look over Varlamov and say, no rush, pal. You know, if he continues to play like he did tonight.
Or just give Sorokin, now instead of Sorokin playing 7 of every 8 games or 6 of every 7.
Or 12, 13 straight.
Right. Yeah. Hypotheticals.
Right.
No, like every 3 or 4, Sorokin could take a rest. Especially if the Islanders aren't going to go anywhere and they start selling off. Sorokin is a long-term investment. If you're going to try to make the playoffs, but you're losing pieces, and you're like, oh, we'll get fill-ins and stuff, and maybe we'll try to make it, there's no point in blowing Sorokin in terms of giving him, like blowing his back out again for a team that's not going to be in the playoffs. You have Hogberg signed for 2 years. Let Hogberg play a little bit. That way you keep Sorokin fresh. That way this summer, he doesn't die.
Death would be a problem, Stefen. Yes. That would be problematic.
Hypothetically, obviously, not figuratively, not literally.
So, moving on to my hero, I had Anthony Duclair penciled in leading into the game tonight. He had points in every game since he's come back. He's looked good as far as
He got robbed today, so.
Yeah, no, I think even though he was off the scoreboard, I still think he looked good, but I did pivot and change to a unanimous choice in Hogberg. I thought he did look very good tonight. Hopefully that's a sign of things to come and not maybe like a flash in the pan, and maybe he can be trusted a little bit more if and when Sorokin needs a break. So folks, that's Hero of the Week. Hogberg is the man. Unanimous decision. That's right. He is the hero in another somewhat forgettable week for the New York Islanders. 1 win, a horrid loss against Buffalo.
We don't even talk about that one. We don't have to.
I don't think we do. I think we can just acknowledge the fact that it was an awful game, a team that the Islanders should have beat. Obviously, if anybody was going to let the Sabres end their streak, and we have a guy we're going to talk to soon, he made a little prediction here, and he was right on the money, that the Buffalo Sabres are going to end their streak against the New York Islanders, and that's what happened. We were just off on the score. You know,
Sabres have won 3 straight, by the way, since including that game. I think the Islanders have turned around the Buffalo Sabres.
Thank Long Island. Thank the Islanders. So that'll do it for the Hero of the Week. And now I tell you all about Isles Fix. Islanders Country, get your daily fix of Isles news, highlights, and analysis by subscribing to Isles Fix, the Monday through Friday Islanders newsletter sent directly to your inbox. Sign up for free or become a paid subscriber for added benefits at ilesfix.substack.com. And now we're taking it to the Snake Den.
Welcome to the Snake Den with Jake the Snake Radonis.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the Snake Den with Jake the Snake Radonis. Jake the Snake, how was your Christmas?
My Christmas was great. I mean, it's just my favorite time of the year. How can you
Me
not love it?
too.
You know, holiday season's always great.
Yes.
I got to go skiing this weekend as well. So,
nice.
Yeah, I'm doing very well.
Look at you.
Well, wait, I heard a little birdie said you fell.
I did.
Oh,
I
no.
thought I had a little more room than I actually had.
Oh,
and I hit a snowbank pretty good. I actually thought nobody was behind me, so I was like, cool, no one saw that. Then the ski school was coming down, so yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah,
How old
that's
are
a
the
fun
kids?
one.
And then the instructor
Very
said,
young.
don't do what that guy just did.
Exactly. So, at
Nice.
least I could be an example.
Okay. Yeah, look at that. Way to turn that into a positive. So was Santa good to you?
Yes.
He was. That's great to hear. And now it's time for you to give us a take, pal.
Yeah, well, this season's been very meh. I guess that's a good word.
One
to
way
put
to put it, yeah.
Yeah, so
Sure.
I thought we'd talk about some prospects.
Let's do it.
So, as you know, right now, World Juniors is going on.
Yes.
U.S. is actually first in their group.
Hey.
They have, I believe, 7 points.
Okay.
And they actually square off with Canada on New Year's Eve.
Hey.
So that's a big game to look out for. And 2 Islanders players who are on Team USA, Danny Nelson and Cole Eiserman, have been contributing to their wins. So Danny Nelson, 2 goals and an assist.
All right.
And Cole Eiserman, 1 goal and 3 assists, which I find that one pretty impressive because we know all
Right.
we've heard is he's a
Goal
goal
scorer.
scorer. Look at that, he's got 3 assists. So you love to see that.
And they're playing on the same line. So that's potentially the future right before our eyes of them playing together in 10 years, maybe.
There's hope in 5 years.
Well-
Islander country, it's coming.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's funny. When's the last time Islander fans could say, we're not going to watch the team, we're going to watch the prospects? Because I mean,
I
when's the last
remember
time?
those days.
You have a couple
Yeah.
of prospects that they've had throughout the past. Even Kiefer Bellows at the World Juniors, Oliver Wahlstrom. But having these two guys, I mean, Cole Eiserman's a freshman at BU, and he's just lighting up the league in terms of what he's done his rookie year. And he's showing to be more than a one-dimensional player, which is a positive sign because one-dimensional players do not make it to the NHL, and if they make it, they don't last. And Denny Nelson probably been the most underrated player in the tournament. Quinn Finley, who is not in the tournament because he overaged or whatever the word is, he's dominating.
Got too old.
He's dominating. Believe he plays for Wisconsin.
I believe so.
He's just dominating.
Nice.
One of the top scorers in the NCAA. So, yeah, and there's a couple more prospects that you'll probably get to.
Yeah, so for World Juniors, we have two other players, non-Americans. So Marcus Gidloff, who was from Sweden. He's a goalie that was drafted this year, I believe.
Yep.
He had 15 saves on 16 shots and an 8-1 win.
Okay.
And then Jesse Nurmi, who is from Finland, who USA did lose to today in a thrilling game. He has an assist. And yeah,
Okay.
so for the World Juniors, you have 4 guys playing. There might be a couple more, but those are some people to highlight for sure. And then outside of the World Juniors, Matthew Maggio last night in Bridgeport, 4-point game, 2 goals, 2 assists. That's the first time he's done that in his career. Huge night for Maggio, and that's a guy that we've talked so much about on this show.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see him coming into his own.
It's nice to just get some kind of good news out of Bridgeport because, I mean, you think
They got to
things
win,
are...
too. That's important to add to that.
Yes,
they did win the game.
7-5 win.
'Cause, yeah.
Right. I mean, you think things are semi-bad here on the island, but you go across the water to Bridgeport, and it is just a disaster over
worse.
there. And it has been for a while.
Yeah.
Just no success. No success over there in a long time.
Listen, credit the young guys down there because it's.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of Bridgeport is to develop these players and teaching them how to win. But when you lose so many games,
It's tough to learn how to win.
how do you learn how to win?
Yeah, it's tough.
And how do you get
That's
prepared for the
difficult.
next level? So it's good to see like Maggio has struggled up mightily this year. I think he had 2 goals in his first 24 games, was healthy scratch, which to me, I don't get why you're healthy scratching prospects. Let them play through it. But I'm not a coach or a manager, so what can I do there? But to see a young player come out of the Christmas break and fight against all these negative motions of losing all the time, to rise above it and have an impressive game, we'll see if he can build on that. But the Islanders need some of these other prospects to wake up the way Maggio did last night. So it was a good sign that he definitely led the charge.
Look, the Islanders need as many prospects to have success as possible because they don't have a lot.
Yeah.
So they need that to happen. So Jake, great stuff on the take there. Thanks for the update on the prospects. And hey, kudos to you for predicting the Islanders' loss against the Sabres. You just got the score very wrong.
Very wrong. I did not expect a touchdown and an extra point. to be scored.
No, you actually thought the Islanders were going to get a point out of that game.
Yeah, I did. Well, definitely did not go that way.
No, it didn't. So that will do it for the Snake Den. And now it's time to go to questions, Brewin.
It's time for Questions Brewin. So go ahead. Ask us a question.
So go, Ed. Ask us a
Wow.
question.
Wow.
It
Ed.
took that long?
Yeah, it did.
Wow.
It did,
That's
actually. I
unfortunate.
think my voice just cracked. Ed, Jay, how we doing, boys?
You know, we're running smoothly back here. It's a
Yeah?
good show. Yeah.
Don't have to, no disciplining of the chat tonight?
No.
No.
I'm giving everyone a fair
Okay.
shot.
Is
tonight.
Jay doing all right? He looks a little sad.
He had his Starbucks. He should
A
be
little
fine.
sad and sleepy. You had your matcha, buddy? You doing okay, pal? You had your green slime?
He talks.
All right, buddy. Cool. Thanks for being here. Ed, what do you got?
Well, speaking of Cole Eiserman, we'll go from Mick Fishsticks. Cole Eiserman tracking better thus far than Wahlstrom was. My biggest concerns for Eiserman.
So 1,000% tracking better because I don't think Wahlstrom lasted a full year at college his freshman year. I don't believe he lasted. If not, he lasted 1 year. Number 2 is I don't remember ever hearing Wahlstrom getting better at him at the other areas of his game. He was shooter. If he was going to make it NHL, a shooter. Jay Pandolfo, who was this is a big point of why the Islanders drafted him. One, he fell, so it landed in his lap. But Lou coached and GM'd Pandolfo when he was with the Devils, trusts him religiously in terms of being able to develop prospects at that program at BU. And that's what he mentioned when we were at the draft floor talking to Lou. He said he's going to go learn from Pandolfo. So I don't think they're going to rush this kid. Like, he shouldn't be a one and done at all. He's 18 years old. Let him develop more. But yeah, I'd be more positive on Eiserman than I would have ever been on Bellows or Wahlstrom because he's showing in his freshman year that he could be first the assists, but also I heard he's playing much better away from the puck. He's been physical. He's winning puck battles. He's knowing where to go in the D zone. And that's vital. Like absolutely vital. And the concern would be is that when the goals start to come maybe a little easier, that he takes his foot off the gas in terms of learning other areas. Because when you're scoring goals, that's all you really want to do, and you get caught up in that. And I think that's what happened to guys like Bellows and Wahlstrom, where it's like it became so easy to score that you just think that it's like when you don't have to study in high school.
Right.
Then you get to college and you don't know how to study.
Right.
You fail.
Right.
That's a shot at my brother, by the way. I had to study my ass off in school. But anyway.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. What else you got?
Anyway, where were we? Yeah. But yeah,
So Cole Eiserman. Yeah.
Eiserman's learning that he needs to take care of business in all three zones if he's going to get playing time, because also Pandolfo's not one that's going to say, here, just keep playing. He has to earn those critical moments, and I would be really high on Eiserman right now. I'm not saying he's the NHL next year or he's going to be a legitimate guy. Lot to prove, but yeah, I would say that he's in a great spot right now.
Excellent.
Turning this one to a little trivia question for you two.
Hey.
T. Boyle, how many times have the Islanders won 2 games in a row this year?
Ha! I already answered that question earlier.
Did you?
It's 2. Yeah, it was
you
mentioned.
got it.
Ed, you got to pay attention while the show's going on, pal.
All right.
T.
Well, then
Boyle
we'll move
trying
on.
to stump us?
Well, I think T. Boyle was genuinely asking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Which
I
is-
think
which
it's
is even
dose.
weirder.
It's dose times.
Because, him and I both weren't paying attention, apparently.
It's okay. It's fine.
All right. So, moving on. I like this question. Will a New York hockey team win another game ever?
Yeah, Buffalo just won 3.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there you go.
Case closed.
Next up, from State of Survival, could Hogberg be a potential trade deadline trade bait?
No, because I don't ultimately think that Varley's going to be back anytime soon. If Varlamov was coming back and some team really needed a goalie, sure. But I think if Hogberg only gets 1 or 2, let's say, I don't think Hogberg would have built up enough.
Right.
Had he had started 4 or 5 already and played like he played tonight, yeah, I don't think it benefits the Islanders to move him at all, because at the very least, if Varley comes back, and Varley's under contract for another, 2 years after this? Or a year, whatever it is, you want Hogberg as your third string because Varley's going to get hurt again probably for a couple of weeks, or Sorokin. So, yeah, I wouldn't look at Hogberg as trade bait. That being said, if the Islanders are getting calls on Hogberg, that means he's playing well, which is a good sign.
Yeah, nothing to add.
All right. Next up from DTMR. Is now the time to ship out Dobson? Has 0 physicality to his game. If no trade, then Cairns get Cairns on the ice to toughen up his game.
Well, I mean, look at the question you just asked, right? If Dobson isn't playing well, then that means his trade value's low, right? And you don't want to sell low on a guy like that, And look, I'm getting more and more concerned about Noah Dobson.
Are you?
I am, because we sat here. Look, he's been a common topic on this show over the course of the season, because his offense isn't where it was last year, and he's still struggling on the defensive side. And we're still kind of playing that whole, well, he's young. There's still hope that he's going to, learn the game and develop into a two-way defenseman, which very well still could happen. But the more this season goes on, the more concerned I get. Well, I don't know if that's going to be the case, because we're still seeing mistakes. We're still seeing the same type of mistakes, whether it's blown coverage, whether it's weak on the puck, whether it's losing puck battles in the corner. It's been tough, and also we've noted how a lot of those mistakes he's made this season have been at critical moments, whether it's in overtime, whether it's late in the third period, which is something that Patrick Waugh yanked him from because he didn't trust him there anymore, right? So, I mean, if the Islanders internally are looking at Noah Dobson saying he's not the guy we thought he was going to be, maybe you get what you think you can get for him now while he still is young and still has the 70-point season on his resume. I just don't know if that's something that they're looking at, and if they're ready to give up on him. And I don't know, what do they even get for him in a trade right now?
I don't think they're even looking to trade.
Right, yeah, I don't think so.
They're going to look, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, they're going to look at last year and say this year's, a lot of his points last year came off secondary assists from Barzal picking up primary assists to people. No Barzal, that took a damage to Dobson's point total. The power play without those key guys, he has no points on the power play because the power play is terrible. And as much as I truly think it's all mental for Dobson. Is he physical? No. Could he be more physical? If he trusted himself to get physical, he'd be physical. Like with Pierre Engvall, I don't think it's a trust thing. He just doesn't want to do it. Like where it's Dobson, I think Dobson wants to be physical, but
right.
in moments where he's like, should I or should I not? He's questioning. By that point, the hit's gone. The guy's lost. That being said, I don't want to say it's like the NFL, but Dobson's had 3 head coaches, right, over his time with the Islanders in 4 different years, 5 different years, like that. And when you see quarterbacks in the NFL go through like 3 or 4 different head coaches, with different ideologies of how to play the position,
Right.
sometimes messes with them. I'm
Sure.
not saying that's the case with Dobson. I do think he should be better regardless of who the coach is. The
Correct.
mistakes he makes, a rookie mistakes, that has to stop. But it can help a young player when different ideologies come in every 2 years telling him, we want you to do this. Like you went from defensive system with Trotz, more offensive. Now we want defense and offense. And he's also, Romanov hasn't been the same player since he got hurt in that game against the Devils. Romanov's taken a lot of chances. Dobson's played with George, Pelech, Romanov. Look at Pajot, where he didn't really have, I mean, I guess Dobson had a great year last year, but Pajot's having a great year, probably one of his best years ever point-wise. More or less has played with the same, at least one similar line mate the entire year, and it's paid dividends. So I think most of this is on Dobson, but it's hard to think that, I don't know, is the changing of coaches, the changing of line mates for a young player still trying to figure it out at the NHL level, is that beneficial to him? Because I'm not sure.
I think whatever the Islanders decide to do trade-wise or shaking up this roster-wise, depending on how the rest of the season goes, I think they still view Dobson as a part of the core that's going to still be around.
Is there any truth to the rumor Lou fired Trotz due to fears that Lane was going to be the head coach of the Red Wings?
I haven't heard that.
I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think there was concern that Lane would get picked up, but they didn't look at Barry Trotz and go, "Oh, we think Lane's better than you." And I think there's a part of it that there was concern there, but I still think there was a mutual thing where Barry, again, I don't know, was like, "Hey, I don't know if I could." When he applied for the Winnipeg job, they offered to him and he said, "Listen, I can't give you 100%. Like, I know I'm not mentally able to give you 100% right now. I'd feel bad taking the job from someone else." You have to think if that conversation happened with Winnipeg, that happened. And also Trotz and Lane are very close friends, that I think more of what happened was Trotz said, "Listen, Lou probably said, we're thinking about making a change." And Trotz said, "Yeah, I can't give you 100%. Lane would be a great option." But I do think Lane would have gotten picked up 1,000% if Trotz doesn't get fired. Yeah.
Next up from the wheel, 89. Which of the following P's are Islanders next season, and do you move any this season? Pelech, Pulock, Pajot, Pierre Engvall.
Want to start?
Well, Pierre Engvall probably is within the organization just because of the contract.
Unless they buy him out for a 10-year buyout.
They could, which would be insane. Let's see. Pajot, I'd say he's probably a prime candidate to not be on the team. And then I think you can go 50-50 on Pelech Pulock. I could see one of them not being on the team anymore. But as we've discussed in previous episodes, there's the movement issue to look at, the trade lists and the salary and the fact that maybe they're not living up to the contracts that they have right now. I mean, there's always salary attention and stuff like that. But if, this season continues to die the slow death that it looks like it's dying right now, then I think it's very realistic to look at those two guys and consider at least one of them being elsewhere.
Yeah, Palmieri, Pajot for me are at the top of that. And again, I think it's going to be really hard to move Pelech and Pulock. One, they're getting paid a lot. Pelech's probably lived up more to his contract than Pulock has. You'd have to go to them and say, "Hey, would you be willing to move a 15 team, whatever it is?" Because right now through this season, they have full trade protections. They're not going to move to the deadline unless they go to them and say, "Hey, would you want to?" But yeah, that's a thing for the summer. But yeah, I think Palmieri, if it's between Palmieri or Pajot of P's being moved, I think Palmieri moving him is a no-brainer if you're not bringing him back. Nelson maybe takes the discount, been a lifelong Islander. Palmieri's been here for a handful of years, but yeah, I would think he's probably gone.
Okay.
Next up, Barzal hasn't scored much at all this year. Is that a factor that might endanger his security with the team?
He's signed long-term. I don't think he's going anywhere. That being said, they need him to show up because he's supposed to be the key to this franchise. He's the franchise player, and he has his first even strength point, 5-on-5 point last night, not tonight, so Saturday. And they need him to be better. But I think you look at the advanced statistics, and he's been good. It's always with him, especially as an assistman. He could have 4 or 5 setups in a game. If they don't bury, it's going to reflect poorly on his stats because he's not going to have the assists where, if the guy's bury, he has points. But I think you need to see him take charge a bit more. He's playing center again, which means he's the puck carrier. He dictates how they break through the neutral zone, how they set up. And you just want to see him take charge, and also he has to show his shot off more. Last year, he shot the puck a lot, playing with Horvat, benefited him immensely. Greatest season for him, point per game since his rookie year. This year, he's been hurt, but when he's had a chance to shoot the puck, he's passed it off. I need him to get back to being confident in shooting the puck again.
Now, look, obviously anything can happen, but I think you look at Barzal, Horvat, Dobson, Romanov,
Duclair,
and Sorokin, and I suppose Duclair,
just with the contract,
for the fresh contract that he got. Those are probably guys that aren't going anywhere. Anybody else, I'd say there's a much heavier likelihood you can see some movement being made there. But I think those are the guys that, whether you agree or not, are probably considered the core that they're going to move forward with, and whatever they decide to do beyond that.
Has anyone seen Nelson and Palmieri?
Well,
Nelson had a goal.
showed up for a second last night until it was taken away, right?
Yep. And Palmieri got an assist. Palmieri assisted Duclair. So, yeah, we saw him last night, bro.
And he had the lone goal against Buffalo.
Yeah.
Assisted by Duclair.
Right, yeah.
Tom Boyle wants to know if Dobson is playing hurt.
Possible.
Anything is possible.
Listen, no one's 100% healthy at this point of the year, and at the end of the year, definitely no one's 100% healthy. He's played a lot of minutes again, and he is young, and he played a lot of minutes in juniors, but yeah, I think everyone's playing banged up, especially with the way the Islanders are hemmed in their zone all the time. Much more, and that's probably a big reason as to the fall off from certain guys, is that under Trotz, like, they did it well in their own zone, but a lot of the times they let the opponents hem them in and just kept everything to the outside, but winning the battles in front, that's physically grueling. So, but yeah, Dobson could be hurt. He's not hurt enough to not play, and he should be better even if he's a little banged up.
Isles 420 asks, how are we getting this team to become a super team?
That is the $1 million question. That is the $1.22 billion mega million.
Well, how are we doing it?
Question.
Figure it out.
You're trading players that have high value. You're getting first-round picks back, and you're flipping those first-round picks with prospects to get elite talent that's available. Like, I don't know how it would work financially, but Elias Pettersson in Vancouver, probably a wish for the Islanders. He's very close with Horvat. There's been JT Miller issues with Pettersson for a couple of years now. Like, you got to go and get those guys, because the only way to become a super team also is drafting well, but having high draft picks and getting guys like these teams that have McDavid, Matthews, like those are all homegrown players. Crosby, Bedard, you got to get those. The Islanders haven't had. Well, I mean, Barzal, you could say, but he's not to the level of those guys. You got to get lucky in the draft lottery. And that means you got to be bad enough. And I don't know if the Islanders this year, everyone wants James Higgins, right? The Long Island kid from Hauppauge. Like, more likely is the Rangers get him in the lottery. But I don't think the Islanders are...
It's just crazy talk.
To become a super team where you get guys like that, where other teams in free agency want to come and play with those said guys, you got to be really bad. And I just don't think with all the long-term contracts, and the core especially, and even when you have Sorokin, like, you lose the ability to tank, which... I don't think tanking's like, I think GMs put teams in positions to lose, but players and coaches aren't. Like, Sorokin's not going to let in goals on purpose to tank. He's going to blow tanking jobs. So I think the Islanders, with their group now, can only be a super team via trade. They don't have the cap space financially to sign the top flight free agents. They could do what they did with Horvat and just hope they hit on a couple more of those big guys.
Look, now obviously you want your team to win. Most fans do. Anyway.
Any fan that doesn't is just crazy. But continue.
Sure. But like, let's say you're looking at these things long term, right? Because everybody's noting the fact, and for good reason, how they've been in that mushy middle. They've been mediocre. Yeah. They get it. They sneak into the playoffs. They get bounced out in the first round. Yeah, it's been fun, but it'd be nice to see a little more progress in that, right? And if they keep spinning their wheels that way, and they keep aging those core guys another year in the middle like that, what's the point? Right? I mean, you got to maximize the value of these players. They tried a few years ago, and they came close and almost worked out. And now they're at a point where they need to kind of reset, right? So, again, not rooting for losses, but if you're looking at the best case scenario for the future of this team, they just don't get it done in the standings here, right? They fade out into the lottery mix, right? Now, maybe they get lucky and, a ping pong ball goes their way. And even if they don't get the number one, maybe they bump into a top 5 spot, right? And then all of a sudden, hey, you're getting a strong draft pick there. And there's some capital, whether you're going to groom that player or whether you're going to swing that into something a little more immediate to help the more immediate core, right? So that's one thing that could happen if they miss the playoffs, which you could look at as a positive for the future. And then, of course, comes the trade deadline. And I think they have to put any loyalties aside if they really are serious about kind of, now the hot thing to do now is, as Dan Rosen talked to us about last week, is to use Washington as a model, right? Where there is an example now where you don't have to tear everything down in order to find more immediate success, right? They're killing it right now. They're doing a great job. So can the Islanders follow something similar, right? Can they jump through whatever movement clause hoops that they have with these players, salary hoops, whatever it is, contract length? Can they unload? And it doesn't necessarily mean all of them, but at least look at the list of Nelson, Pajot, Palmieri, Lee, maybe Pulock, maybe Pelech, and maybe you go beyond that list. But, I mean, they have guys now that have contracts that are either expiring this year or next year. It's significant money coming off the books, and maybe it gets off the books a little sooner if you can find a trade partner, right? So not only are you potentially bringing in whatever assets you can get for them, whether it's a first rounder for Brock Nelson, maybe a second rounder here or there, maybe a A or B level prospect somewhere in there, right? So you're getting that trade capital, and you're also getting rid of money against the cap. And then all of a sudden you have a team where you can kind of morph it around a little bit. You get to the summer, and whether it's Lou in the chair or somebody else, they can take that trade capital and they can spin it around into something a little more valuable now, right? Guys that are in their 20s, mid to late 20s, right? Guys with a little more speed. Guys that can hang with Matt Barzal and Anthony Duclair and Bo Horvat, right? And just shore up this team where there's going to be holes by, losing those guys, and there's already holes in the roster. But look, you have your goaltender. He's had some struggles, but you have your goaltender. You have some form of a top to middle pairing in Dobson and Romanov if they get their act together. You have Barzal, who's maybe a 1-2 center, right? And you have Horvat as well. So look, they have pieces they can build around, but the more this season goes the way it's going, like this is the opportunity now to shuffle the deck and turn this team around and try to maximize those guys, because like you said, long-term deals. Barzal, Horvat, Sorokin, long-term deals. These guys aren't going anywhere unless they do decide to just blow the whole thing up, which I don't think they're going to do. So you got to try to deal as many of those guys as you can, and then hope that you get a little lucky around draft time, and then maybe they have a fun summer where they can move some things around, and you got an exciting roster on paper to look at going into 25-26.
And I'll add one more thing to that is you also don't have to wait till the summer to you could trade and you could sell and buy.
Sure, yeah.
They flip guys like Nelson and Palmieri for first-round picks and go out and get guys that are Horvat level now. Sure. They could still make the playoffs with just a different core that's built short-term, long-term.
Yeah, maybe.
In theory. It's harder because the really good teams are not going to get rid of those players.
Yeah.
It's doable. But, yeah, you have to put yourself in a great spot to get damage, whether it's prospects at the draft or flip, because holding on to these guys and losing them for nothing would be the most horrific thing this team could do.
Yes, it would be a major setback for sure. One more, Ed.
Would they consider trading Lee? His value is real high.
They would. Lee would have to approach them. I feel like they're not going to approach Lee and say, hey, we're thinking about moving you. He is the captain. They'll move him if he wants to leave. The same way they told Chara and they told Andy Green, and they said, hey, if you want to go somewhere else and chase a cup. Like if Lee didn't have any trade protection and he wasn't the captain, yeah, he's at the top of the list probably to get moved because he's having a great year, and who knows what happens next year. But it would have to be a long talk with Lee about, do you want to go somewhere else? Because quite frankly, him playing the way he's playing hasn't been part of the problem. Maybe you could say the culture's been the issue, but if he's going to do this at $7 million, which he's playing like you look at the $7 million, he's playing to what his contract is. He's like back on track. And if he's playing the third line right now, he's playing well as a top line guy or second line guy. There's value in having him for one more year, and then you move him next year. But also having term on your contract, teams might be willing to give more because you have control. But Lee's an interesting one. I would be utterly shocked, but it's interesting.
You wouldn't be dealing him because he's part of the problem. You'd be dealing him because, oh man, he's actually living up to the value of his contract. Well, we got to sell high on this guy because let's face it, going into this year, everybody and their mother thought that this guy was going to be well below the value of his contract.
Bought out.
And literally searching for a spot on the roster. I remember we look at the lineup. Well, where do you put Lee? Where does he go? I guess the third line, whatever the case, right? But now all of a sudden, he's putting up numbers. He's playing great. I mean, again, captain, loyalty. You also want to show not only the rest of your franchise, but also players around the league. You look at what the Rangers did with Trouba. You want to show the league that you also take care of your players, which is something that Lou does too. So that you're kind of like, it's a delicate dance where you got to do right by your franchise, but you also have to show the league at large that you take care of your players, right? So that's a tough one. But, you know, behind closed doors, Lee might be like, listen, Lou, I'm cool with a shot at a cup somewhere else. Like, if you find the right place, this is where I'm willing to go.
Yep.
You know, he might, same with like Brock Nelson. I mean,
Palmieri, all these guys.
All these guys might be like, look, I love it here. It's not working out. That sucks. But, you know, I'm 33 or whatever it is. Like, I wouldn't mind if you sent me off to Colorado or Dallas or whatever the case may be for a little run in a cup. I mean, yeah, they love the area. They're loyal to the team. But, you know, these guys haven't tasted the chalice yet, right? So they might be totally fine with going somewhere.
You make a great point. The Islanders have no players on their roster that have won a Stanley Cup. Bortuzzo was the one that had the cup.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
I mean, Patrick Wallace won a cup, sure, but all these guys that are in their 30s, like you said, have never gotten to a final.
Right.
So that might play a huge factor, but wrap this puppy up.
Let's wrap this thing up. Folks, thank you so much for getting your questions in. 4 questions, Brewin. That will do it for that. And before we go, I'm going to tell you guys about our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/HockeyNightNY for exclusive content featuring Q&As, columns, videos behind the scenes, merch and partner discounts, and even an invitation to hang out with us here at Floored Media for a live airing of Hockey Night in New York, so you can watch us be clowns live in person. And this is the best way, one of the best ways to show your support for the show. So please consider taking a look at patreon.com/HockeyNightNY. And with that, we can wrap this up. So I want to send a big thanks to David Alter of The Hockey News for joining us, talking Leafs, talking Islanders, and of course, want to thank our great sponsors, starting with Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Find out how to unplug your game at mainstboardgamecafe.com. Also, a big thanks to Center Station Bar and Grill. Head on down to 279A Sunrise Highway for Isles games, live music, karaoke, comedy shows, and more. And a big thanks to Razor and Kniff, attorneys at law. Nobody likes going to court, but if you have to, call 212-LAW-1500 for a free consultation. And also a huge thanks to Tovey Hockey, creators of the Diamond Air Blade. Go to toveyhockey.com to check out their great products and use promo code HNINY10 for 10% off your order. Check it out. And folks, remember to rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. Please go ahead and do that before the new year. Stefen Rosner, where can we find you everywhere?
Everywhere. On X at Stefen_Rosner, STEFEN_ROSNAR, the Hockey News Islanders, NHL.com, and my Substack, the Elmonters at theelmonters.com.
That's right. Jake Radonis, where can we find you, buddy?
You'd find me on everything at Jake Radonis.
At Jake Radonis. So simple, so easy. You can find me at Shawnee Hockey on the Twitter. You can follow the show on all social media platforms at Hockey Night NY. We're also on Blue Sky, which is a little longer than that, but you'll find us if you really want to. Also, check us out at HockeyNightNY.com for more Isles coverage over there. So with that, hope everybody has been enjoying their holidays. We hope everybody has a very happy new year. We're going to see you on Saturday, probably same time, 8 p.m., but we'll let you know on those social media platforms. So for Stefen Rosner, for Jake the Snake Radonis, for Eddie Burns, and for Jay Floored Media Belsky, I've been Sean Cuthbert. We've been Hockey Night New York, and we will see you next time.